Hey guys, Eelke Kleijn here. My new single, The Magician, is just out. It's the first single of my upcoming album, and today I'm gonna run you through all the ins and outs of how I made it. I'm very proud of the track, so let's get down to business. First of all, the most important thing about this track is probably the bass line. Let me play that solo for you. As you can hear, it's a sample and hold resonance and filter modulation. I made it with my modular. I'm going to go into detail about that very soon. But first, let's check quickly all the effects and everything that are on it. If I play it without any of the effects. It's a pretty simple rhythm. Just plays F sharp, then A, and then D. And the last time it does F sharp, goes down to E and then D. So it's a very simple riff, lots of repetition. The volume you see here doesn't really matter because my modular isn't set to pick it up. So basically it's all sending it out on the same volume here. There's a little bit of processing on the bass. As usual, there's an LFO tool, which is my sidechain compression. And I like this compared to old sidechaining because you can very easily draw in the exact curve that you want. Then there's guitar rig for a little bit of delay, probably some reverb. No, just delay in this case. Very minimal, set up to go left and right like a ping pong delay. And then there's my Trident, which is my preferred EQ, and it adds a little bit in the 2K region and in the 7K, and I always boost the highs a little bit, especially on bass lines. It makes them breathe a little bit more, I guess. So basically the whole track was built around this bass line idea. As you can see, there's all these little cuts and things. Basically, I recorded about 5 or 6 minutes, I guess, of improvising and, tweaking the filter and tweaking the resonance and all that. And then I cut it up and used it in the track. There's a couple of nice edits, for instance, here. So this little bit right here is just me pushing up the sub-frequencies on the bass, for instance, from the modular. And there's all these other ones where I'm manipulating little things at a time. So let me show you how I made the sound on the modular. The bass line is actually a very simple patch. It's a raw saw wave together with a little bit of a sub-frequency, and then it gets manipulated by a sample and hold frequency manipulation. I had the idea to do a track like this in my head for a while already, and I wanted it to be melodic. Like a lot of times when you hear that typical sort of frequency manipulation, it's for sounds that aren't necessarily changing in pitch or in key, and I wanted to have something melodic do that. So the basic raw patch is this one. And what makes it so recognizable is the resonance right here. Without it, there isn't much left. It's basically, like I said, it's a very easy patch. My MIDI signal comes in here, so we have a CV and gate signal. The gate gets sent to the envelope, it gets sent to Mavs, and it gets sent to René. And then the pitch signal, the CV signal, just goes to the Dixie oscillator. And then I get a raw saw wave, which goes into the filter input 1, and then the sub, which goes into filter input 2. So there's some nice envelope on here to make it like nice and short. But the main thing is what happens down here. So instead of going for sort of like a random, in this patch I went with a semi-random from René. So it gets its X clock input from the gate signal. So every time a note hits, it will jump 1 to the right. And then I used another gate trigger to maths to create a little bit of a Y movement as well. So otherwise I would be limited to 4 of these, and now it's like 16. So these determine the amount of frequency that I send through, and then I have the quantized output go into veals here, and I can manipulate it there to go from almost nothing to maximum manipulation. The sub-bass frequency here is important as well. And that basically is the whole patch. Like I said, it's very simple. I like simple sounds like these, and I've built my modular in such a way that I've got some really powerful oscillators, and I always feel you can definitely hear that when you listen to a sound. You know, it's got that raw sort of authenticity, which I really like. And so if I record this for a track, I would turn it up and just play with it a little bit, you know. And if I record something like that for 5 or 6 minutes, and then like I show you, I cut it up into little bits, and that is how I sequence a track like this. Then moving on from the bass, I would say that the most important thing in the track, of course, is the rhythm. Almost all the rhythm that I have, all the drums and all the hi-hats, they go through my chain of effects here. So there's a UAD Neve preamp, which is nowadays pretty much prominent on all the tracks that I do. And there's a little bit of a trident, again my preferred EQ, some top end, and you know, some minor cuts here and there. Let me solo out the percussion for you. So let's dive into all of these separately. First of all, there's 2 really important shaker parts. These one called left and right. As you can guess, one is just the left side and one is just on the right side. Together they make like one nice stereo shaker. So the way I make a lot of these is I get a preferred plugin, which it can be a loop or it can be a plugin. Let's see if I have it open still here. I'll bounce them to audio a lot. So in Contact, yeah, here we go. Shimmer Shake Strike is one of my preferred plugins. In this case, if I play this, you can still hear both the shakers that I used. You know, you can manipulate the pattern, you can humanize it, you can change some of the sounds and the mixes and the reverb and all that. So my first, when working on the percussion, the first thing I do is usually get one or two of these going, pen them hard left and right, and then I'm starting to bounce to audio. So then we'll get these two here. Let me focus on the left one first. If I take out all of the effects. As you can hear, it's a little bit different. There was probably, I think there was maybe one stage of exporting and importing on it already, or maybe this is the one, let me check. Yeah, so what I'll often do is, like I said, I'll bounce something. I might process it with a few plugins like distortion or reverb, and then I'll bounce it to audio again, and I'll end up with the final thing. In this case, the one thing that was the most important here is this LFO tool. So LFO tool isn't just for sidechaining. You can do all these crazy things with it. So in this case, I'm just using it to shorten that tail, and I'm actually manipulating that throughout the track. So if you go to this part over here, you can see it's getting shorter. So I use that a lot for dynamic percussion. So that's prominent on this one, and it's prominent on the other one as well, I think. Oh no, the other one doesn't have that. But both of them together, they go through this one bus called shakers, I suppose. Yeah. And there's a couple of plugins on there. Let's just start them one by one. One is Altiverb. Just getting a little bit of depth in there. Then again, the Trident, my preferred EQ, is pushing the highs, taking out some of the 5K region here. Then there's BX Digital, which is great for stereo manipulation. In this case, I'm just EQing, putting a little bit of top end on there and taking out a little bit of 2 to 5K region. And then there's LFO tool again for compression. That looks like this. And then this one goes into the Neve preamp as well over here. And so they all run together with the kick and all the other percussion. So moving on to this one. So just a simple clav. Probably either I started this from battery as something I drew in, or I might have done it with the Shimmer Shake Strike, I don't remember, but made the basic loop, bounced it to audio, and then we sort of get the same thing. So a little bit of Capitol Hill reverb on there, and then there's the AMS. I don't know if it's very hearable, but yeah, this adds a little bit of a tail, and then that one does as well. Usually I use a combination of reverb, so maybe 1 or 2 different ones, and you end up with a really nice tail like that. Then there is, now this is an interesting one. I like these kind of sounds. This hits exactly on the kick, on the second kick, so sort of on the clap. And I like sounds that, I did that in the calling as well, that give an accent. And then this is a bit of percussion that I tuned to the track, so it's in F sharp. And it just stands out a lot in the complete track if you go to this bit here. I really like those kind of sounds. Moving on, there's a couple of claps here. Again, these have all been heavily manipulated. So this started with a clap sound that I loaded into battery. Maybe you can still see the original clap here somewhere. No. No, it is one of these probably. Like I said before, my preferred way of working, you can see here all the muted bits. So this is the clap. It consists of 3 different claps, and maybe I can still find it. So it's this might be the hi-hat actually. Oh yeah, this was the open hi-hat. But a lot of the sounds I'll use some loops. I'll program them myself and then bounce down to audio and do the rest. So clap in this case, as you can see, it's called pedal return. So it went through my Strymon pedals, and then there's a little bit of EQ on it and a little bit of high end here as well. Throughout the years, I've learned it's not so much important to have loads and loads of percussion. It's important that everything has its own place in the mix and that everything really fills up a gap. So there's, as you can see here, there's really not that much running. It's those 2 shakers, it's the clap sound, and it's my kick and 1 hi-hat. And so if I you can see I'm not really using that much, and every element has its own function and place in the mix, and I find that the most important bit. There's some little tweaks here on top of the clap, like this one. I usually make those with my modular. I'll bounce clap, probably not the main clap that you have here, but one of the another sample. I'll bounce it through the reverb on my modular, and you'll end up with something like this. And in this case, I've edited to make it like I cut up that part and then really pulled it down, so you get a nice, very nice sort of attack and leave sort of thing. So drum wise, there's not that much going on. There's a really nice ride here that I like a lot. It consists of 2. This is the main one. And then there's this one. As you can hear, that's going left and right, and together they make this really nice sort of stereo ride. So that's mostly it for the drums. I mean, there's all these variations in the track, as you can see. After a minute and a half here, I'm dropping the claves, and then they'll come back in later. And I'm trying to keep it interesting with all these little breaks and things. There's some effects as well. This is made from this clave sound here. Then moving away from the drums, another important part of the track is the string bit. It's a very simple line, F sharp in the bass, and then F sharp and C sharp on top. And the only thing I'm changing is the bass, so it's going from F sharp to E to D. And then I'm basically manipulating the filter cutoff. This is a string from Omnisphere, by the way, one of my favorite plugins. It's it's the same strings that I used for the calling, so it's a sound I quite like. Plugin wise, nothing on there except for an LFO tool which does the compression. And what I do like to do is, in this case, I'm manipulating the cutoff here, and I'll open up the resonance a little bit. The resonance in this standard Omnisphere filter is really nice. So if I'm low, I like to turn it up a little bit. If I'm higher, I like to turn it down a little bit so you don't lose too much of the body. But it's a very simple thing. It doesn't change anything throughout the track, and if you have a look at the notes, it's basically the same thing throughout. Then moving on, very important in this track, the vocal. So the vocal that I use for this track, I'm not even sure what he says. It's like, you never walk away, or you never move away, or something. I actually quite like that. I like vocals where you can't really hear what they're saying because you make your own little story out of it. So this is the only vocal that I'm using. And there's all kinds of manipulation going on with this. So let's play this bit together with the reverbs and the delays here. Usually if I have a vocal like that I really like and that I use throughout the track, everything else is just effects made from that same vocal. So we have the reverse one at the start here. That's basically just taking a very small bit of the vocal and then putting a lot of reverb on it and then reversing it, and you get the same voice quality but a very different effect. And then we have all these little manipulations here. So this one right here is another reversed one. Then this one is done with my Strymon Big Sky. It's the cloud effect, and it does this really nice sort of weird reverb. Quite like that. This one is just, so if I draw this out, this is probably done also with the Strymon, one of my pedals, and I'll usually record it for a really long time. So if we take this whole thing, you know, you'll see all these. All these tape delayed vocals. You know, I'll make a couple of them, and then so if we go back to the original sound, you'll see I'm just taking that one bit and then looping it. Two claps, we'll get to that later. Then there's reverb, delay again on the vocal. I'll solo the vocal sound as well. So those reverbs and delays are either modular or Strymon. There's a few more sounds right here. A reverse vocal. This is probably a vocal from a different track. And that's that same vocal processed with the modular. A little analog string here. Kind of like these kind of sounds as well. Again, the same vocal processed with grain delay. Some big noises. As you notice, this track is, even for my doing, it's pretty minimal, but every sound has its own spot in the mix. Here's another vocal. I think I just got Strymon Magneto for my modular, and so I processed, again, the same vocal, the main vocal. Honestly, a lot of it, like a sound like this, I don't know beforehand what I'm just going to get. I'll just run the vocal through the modular, you know, tweak some things and see how it comes back. And that usually works really well for me. It's just a matter, you know, because as you can see, this is modular stereo take 58. So I've probably done like 57 takes before that didn't really make the cut or so. That's not to say that I'll do 58 takes of this sound, but it means for this whole track, this is the 58th time I'm moving towards the modular and trying to manipulate something there, you know? So a lot of those sounds, they don't make the cut, and then there's many that end up in the track after, at the end, you know? So in the breakdown, there's not really that much happening. It's stripping back to the bare minimum. Slowly building it up with the hi-hat here. Bassline, this bit is important. Here it's low pass filtering, and then in this bit I set the modular to high pass filtering. So you lose the low bits, but you get that nice high sort of energy. Exported a different kick as well, where I took all the high frequencies out with a little bit of automation. And the funny bit is, after the breakdown, the bass parts are basically exactly the same as before the breakdown, but I've moved them back and forward. So this part right here, right after the breakdown, that's the one that played at the end before we went into the breakdown, and then that bit after there, that's what played before here. So I've just swapped them around. I was in a bit of a hurry to finish the track, swapped them around, and you know, I kind of liked it and I just kept it like that. Trying to see if there's anything I've missed. Yeah, there's a small little, you know, some small sounds like this one. It's been it's like a string sound, an omnisphere string sound, and I used LFO tool to chop it. So it gives it a really nice touch. It's just a hint of melodies every now and then. Yeah, then there's some small sounds that I might have missed, you know. These clap fills here. It's basically, I like sort of signature kind of fills. So this signature fill is first this one. Then this one. And then we have the big splash over here. This again is manipulated reverb. And then together those three sort of fill, or they combine to make like a signature sort of fill where you instantly recognize, you know, this track. I like to make all my own effects. So instead of getting a loop or something from somewhere, in this case, I've used 1 or 2 claps for this. I'll run them through some of my external effects. Now I'm doing this all with external effects, but it's just as easy with internal effects. You know, it doesn't have to be external processing. But I'm running it through that and manipulating until I'm happy and sort of make my own effects like that. Same for these splashes, and you know, this is reverb that I'm turning down, and then I use it as a riser just by turning it up again. Again, you know, all my risers and effects, it's all made from manipulated sound. So in this time, it's the claves that I used at the start. I use it a few times. Yeah, and I think we're almost there. I can show you a little bit of the processing on the track. You know, of course, every track has its own processing, and I've gone over a few to show you how I tweak the sounds. If you've seen any of my other deconstruction videos, this is always pretty much the same for me. So by now, usually I master inside Cubase. I'm thinking about switching to Luna just for the mixing and the mastering bit, but so far it's still all on Cubase. And I'll go over these. So first in line, Fairchild. It's my favorite compressor. Does something really nice to the overall balance of the track. So that's on there. I'm mixing through this at all times. Then there is the Harrison EQ. It's always on there. I always take out a little bit of low end and I push the high ends a little bit. It's just the way I like to mix. And I also have it for the high pass. So I like to do this. Then Trident EQ. On the master bus, I use it super minimal. So there's like a little bit of a push on the high end here. BX Digital does my stereo width. So you can manipulate mid-side. I always take out the low part on the side mix, and then I do a little bit of EQing here depending on what the track needs. Then there's the inflator. Oh, we're still inside. This is like a pre-limiter. The amount, it's sort of like a, yeah, I don't know what it does exactly. It's sort of like you go through it before the limiter and it sort of flattens some of the peaks already. its success depends on basically on the track and how hard you go into it. So I usually have this up to between 60 and 100, and then I change the curve somewhat. Because it's easy to overdo this and go a little bit crazy, and you get a little bit of distortion. And then in the end, isotope ozone is my limiter. That's the only thing it does, just a maximizer. Ceiling set to -0.3, so that if someone plays an MP3 file, it won't distort because of the conversion. You know, and these things, I set it to stereo unlink, so it limits left and right separately. A little bit of transient emphasis. I've always liked IRC2, and I have it to true peak limiting again, so you don't get distortion when it gets converted from digital to analog. And then I try not to have it limit too much, so let's see what it does on the end track. I like my track not to be completely squashed. So if this is like hitting -2, -3, I'm pretty happy. If it's going -4, -5, I will dive back into the track and change things because I just don't like it if the track becomes a square. It needs to have some dynamic. So this is usually pretty good. And I think that's it for the Magician. So I hope you enjoyed that video. Thanks for tuning in, thanks for watching, and I'll be sure to make more of these in the near future.